bag vibe, baby.
Welcome to the Cup of Joe Show, where we explore the journey of recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. One story, one conversation, and one step at a time. I'm your host, Joe, creating a safe space for honest discussions about the challenges and triumphs of addiction and alcoholism. In each episode, we'll hear inspiring stories and uncover tools that make healing possible. Sobriety is not a one-size-fits-all journey, and you don't have to face it alone. Recovery is possible, and it's worth it. Thank you for joining the Cup of Joe Show. Now let's get started. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Cup of Joe Show. Today I'm excited to talk to my friend Jim F. Jim has been sober since September 7th, 2020. He's a proud husband, father of two, and grandfather of two. He shares his home with one laid-back cat and enjoys playing golf, especially when he's feeling healthy enough to hit the greens. Born in Virginia, Jim's journey has taken him from Ohio to San Diego, where he was raised and later attended college. He served with honor in the United States Marine Corps. Thank you for your service, Jim. From 1968 to 1995, then spent nearly 2 decades at General Dynamics before retiring in 2013 and settling in Tennessee. Jim brings a wealth of life experience, a strong sense of service, and a story of recovery that reminds us all of the power of perseverance. So grab a cup of coffee, relax, and let's get into it. Jim, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Joe. Thank you very much. I'm glad to be with you.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. So tell me, what was it like growing up, Jim?
Well, as I said, I was born in Virginia, and Norfolk, Portsmouth area down there. And at a very young age, I was probably about 3.5. My parents divorced, and so I lived with my mom, and we lived actually with my grandparents for a while, and had great friends down there. Started elementary school down there in the first grade, and then my mom, she had an uncle who was in the Army, and he was assigned to the Kent State University ROTC of later fame, obviously. And but anyway, he was moving to Ohio, and he taught my mom into relocating from Virginia up to Ohio. And so we moved to Ohio in about 1956, I guess, or something like that, and had a small house out in the country in a little place called Streetsboro, and it was uh, it was tiny. I've been back to visit it a couple times, and I couldn't believe how small it really was.
Huh.
And but we lived there, in Streetsboro for about 5 years, and then we moved into Kent itself, and which is the town which was closest to where we were. And my hero, frankly, is my mother. I mean, this is a single lady who raised myself and my daughter and my sister, I'm saying, uh, on her own. Uh, she had a tough time of it. She had a tough life, but to her credit, she, number one, never badmouthed my father,
Mm.
who she was divorced from, and number two, always made sure that we had what we needed. Maybe not always what we wanted, but we
Right.
always had what we needed. And she is my hero. I mean, she really sacrificed so much for us during that whole time. And so we lived in Ohio for about 7 years. And then my mom, through her job, met a gentleman who she ultimately ended up marrying. And my stepfather, Stephen, and he was reassigned. He worked for a bank, and he reassigned to San Diego, California. And so we left the frigid shores of Ohio and made the long trek across country and moved to San Diego. And can't believe what a change that was. You know, when we
Yeah.
got over there. I remember coming driving over the hill overlooking San Diego, and you could just see it was just a paradise. It really was very, very nice. So I started high school there, and uh, and then went through high school, and ultimately went to the University of San Diego out in California, and had a good time. While I was in California, or while I was in university, uh, I signed up for what's called the Marine Corps PLC Platoon Leaders Class, which gave you a commission when you graduated from college. And that was in 1965 when I joined up. And then ultimately in 69 graduated from college and then came on active duty at that point in the Marine Corps.
Wow. Did you? Because that was right around the time of Vietnam, wasn't it, Jim?
Yes, it was. It was. And it was an interesting dynamic. You know, we San Diego was really a fairly uh, conservative town. It really was. And I remember one instance at San Diego State University. The bunch of protesters were going to take the flag down, and the San Diego State football team came out, surrounded the flag, and said, "Come on, guys,
Mm.
come up here and try to get the flag down." They didn't try.
Yeah.
They gave it up, and but it was pretty conservative, all things considered.
Yeah.
So we didn't have too many of the. We had protests, but we didn't have too much of it.
Now, were you drinking at all at this time, Jim?
You know, I had my first drink when I was about 18,
Okay.
and I graduated from high school, and my friends and I, now that we were legal, decided we go to Tijuana for the evening, and so we went down there, and that was not a good experience. Uh, I drank way too much, and was brought home by a friend's father. And I remember the story goes that at about 6 in the morning, the doorbell rang, and my mother and stepfather came to the door and said, "Is your son Jim Flynn?" "Yes." "Where is he?" "Well, he's down in his bed." "Yeah." "No, he's not. He's out in our car." and and so and my father the whole time kept saying, "Did any of those women mess with you down there?"
Oh boy.
They were more concerned about my health, you know. And
Yeah.
I played baseball at that time, and at noon we had a doubleheader scheduled, and I was not feeling top of the world, let's just say. And but I caught both games of the doubleheader, and somehow made it through. But that really was the only time I'd had a drink, and I really alcohol in high school was not a big deal. I mean, the people who did drink in high school were really the outcasts in a lot of ways. Nuns that would get fired up in high school. It just never happened. I never had any inkling of drinking at that point. I was into sports big time, and so I never drank at all. Not until I got to college, and then that changed.
So what changed in college, Jim?
Well, I mean, we have. I was part of a fraternity, and we had Friday keggers and one thing or the other. And but I never, as I later on say, I had what I laughingly say, adult acquired alcoholism. I really didn't drink that much in college. I mean, yeah, we had our parties and one thing or the other, and and then frankly, when I got into the Marine Corps on active duty, because of assignments that I had, I really didn't drink a whole lot when I was on active duty. Uh, you had to be careful. I had positions of quite a bit of responsibility, and so you just didn't drink. I mean, you had happy hours on Fridays every now and then, and but nobody ever got drunk. Uh, and we probably once a year on the Marine Corps birthday on November the 10th of every year was the Marine Corps birthday, and so we always had a big celebration at that time. And I got to say that there was a few times when I probably had a little too much to drink. Uh, and those occasions. But as a general statement, uh, because of my assignments and one thing or the other, I just didn't drink all that much off duty, and and so it really was not something that really it took a lot of my time and effort, to be honest with you.
That makes sense. I like. It's interesting. You said adult acquired alcoholism. I get it. I do. I get that. Um, so you're you're in the Marine Corps, and where are you living at this time, Jim?
At this time, well, we lived in multiple places. I was at Quantico, Virginia, is where we trained to start with. And I left there and I went to Oklahoma for artillery school. And then I was stationed at Camp Pendleton, California. And from Camp Pendleton, I was sent to Vietnam. And so I spent about 9 months in country at Vietnam. Came back to uh, Camp Pendleton at the time, and then got reassigned to Dallas, Texas. We had a Marine Corps Reserve unit down in Dallas, and I was assigned as as what they call inspector instructor. Basically, you instructed the reserves on uh, in this case it was an artillery unit, and so I stayed with them for about 3 years. Went back to Fort Sill for about 10 months, and then I went to Okinawa for a year and spent a year in Okinawa. Came back, went to Quantico, Virginia, and was a training second lieutenants who had just come out of the basic school, and they were there for about 26 weeks, and from there I transferred. I got a call one day, and I transferred to the Pentagon, and I was an aide to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I was a Marine aide to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. I did that for almost 3 years, and traveled all over the world with him. That was a really interesting assignment. Uh, and then I went to school, back to Command Staff College, and then I got a call saying, "Hey, you got two choices. You can go to recruiting duty in Cincinnati, Ohio, or you can go to Copenhagen, Denmark as assistant naval attaché." I said, "What?" I said, "What? You give me that choice?" So anyway, we signed up. I started language training and went through 9 months of language training to learn Danish language, and then went to Denmark for 3 years and had a wonderful time. And we traveled all over Europe. It was a wonderful assignment. It really was. And came back from there and went to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and I ended up with a couple of assignments there to include commanding officer of a battalion while I was down there for about 14 months, something like that. And then there was a operation, if you'll remember, Just Cause, where there was the invasion of Panama after going after Noriega, and they established a bunch of 1 year tours in Panama. And so I spent a year in Panama working counter drugs. We were hunting for Noriega and for Pablo Escobar. And so I spent a year there and came back uh, to Washington, D.C., as a matter of fact. And that's where I really finished up my career. Uh, I was 3 years or 2.5 years as the commanding officer of the Marine Barracks in Washington, D.C. And then the rest of my tour, I spent as the executive assistant to the commandant of the Marine Corps. And so you can see where some of those assignments were pretty high profile assignments. So I really didn't drink much. I mean, you know, off duty, if you will. And then in '95, I decided that I had to decide what I was going to do when I grew up, and so I decided to retire from the Marine Corps, and I was recruited by General Dynamics. It was really called General Motors Defense at the time, and
Okay.
they made a vehicle called the Light Armored Vehicle, which the Marine Corps uses, 8-wheeled vehicle, and I was hired to uh, to continue to deal with the Marine Corps, which I felt very comfortable doing, obviously, and then also to engage with the Army, who we were trying to sell wheels to the Army, and that was like pulling teeth out of wisdom teeth out of somebody. But the Army finally ended up buying what became known as a striker vehicle, their 8-wheeled vehicle. And so I spent about 16, 17 years with General Dynamics altogether. And frankly, that's probably where my problems began. Uh, because I was, my assignment was to be in Sterling Heights, Michigan, which was not Virginia. So I was separated from my family. I had unaccompanied tour up there, and I got an apartment, and things went downhill from there. Frankly, I decided, uh, I'd come home at night, and from work and cook dinner and have a drink, maybe two, maybe three, and uh, and before you knew it, I was doing this on a daily basis, and which was not good. My wife knew about it and was very unhappy about it. And finally, in 2013, I decided to retire from General Dynamics and came back to Virginia at that point. And our home was still in Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. And so I came back, and uh, my drinking didn't get any better. And my wife was very unhappy about it. I remember seeing the first Alcoholics Anonymous book showed up in my bookcase, and, and I kind of blew it off. I don't have a problem. I can stop anytime I want to. I don't want to right now. And
That's right.
you've heard that story before,
I've
and
heard that story.
and so yeah, I can quit anytime I want to. Well, I just didn't want to. I wasn't ready, and um, and so this went on for a couple of years, and then ultimately we moved down here to Tennessee, and it didn't get much better down here, and but that's when I got introduced to uh, Cornerstone, which was
Mm.
a alcohol rehab center here in Knoxville, and that's when I had my first introduction to Alcoholics Anonymous. And
So what got you into Cornerstone, Jim? Was there an event or what kind of made you seek help?
I knew I had a problem, but I wasn't really willing to admit it. And and finally, my wife and I talked about it, and said maybe what we need to do is seek rehab. And so I found out about Cornerstone, and enrolled in there and went to 10 weeks at Cornerstone, and I thought, okay, I know I'm not cured, but I think I got a good handle on this. But then I did the things that they said don't do when I left. I didn't get a sponsor. I didn't work the steps. I mouthed a lot, but I didn't do much, and I continued to drink. And so that went on for a couple of years. And I went to a second rehab in a place in Maryland. Uh, Up there, it was a place that a pastor had started up years ago, and I'm trying to think of the name right now, but I'm just going blank. But in any case, I went up there, and it turned out to be a place for not only for rehab, but it was also for offenders who have relapsed in the past. And so the idea was to try to get somebody who had already relapsed and and get them involved in the program. And I did that, and I did that for another 12 weeks actually, and came back, and it was with me. It was not physical; it was mental. It was a mental problem that I had that had nothing to do with urgings or cravings or one thing or the other. I just liked to drink, and that was the bottom line. I enjoyed it, and so I continued even after that 12-week period of time, and many bucks later, uh, that I continued to drink, and we finally got to the point where, frankly, my wife says, "That's it, you know." Either you knock this shit off, or I'm leaving, and I said, well, do we want to blow 26 years of marriage because of my insecurities and my failings? And we decided we did not. And then I had my last drink. And that was in 2015, I guess it was. And uh, but then back and forth. I was a chronic relapser, and my current sponsor was really hesitant to take me on. Uh, John is just a hell of a guy, and we had a meeting and talked about it, and he says, "I'm not sure you're ready for this," and I says, "Well, uh, John, I think I am this time." and and that was in 2020, and at that point, I decided, okay, you got to get serious. You're not getting any younger. You're going to end up hurting your health, and your wife's going to take a powder and leave. And so I decided that was it, and I had my last drink, and have been clean and sober ever since.
Do you think because you had, I mean, you had an amazing military career, Jim, and a lot of leadership, a lot of responsibilities. Do you think, looking back, it kind of contribute to, I can handle this, I've got this, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, my ego was so big, that when we were doing the working the steps, egotism was really up at the top of the list there, and because I thought, I'm immune, I can do this on my own, and initially I tried to do it on my own, and that was an absolute failure, no doubt about it, because I think I was emotionally attached to drinking. I really was. And I didn't really have some of the physical issues with the alcohol. It was all mental. And I told myself I had to have a drink. And, uh, and so it took me a long time to get over that. The first time I had to stand up and say, I'm Jim and I'm an alcoholic, that was very, very difficult for me because I was admitting defeat. And I had never, ever admitted defeat ever before. And that was hard. It was very hard.
Yeah, it's kind of like you're in one part of your life, it's like never surrender.
Yep.
And in this part of your life, it's, surrender is the key to victory. You know,
Absolutely, it is, and I finally got that through my head that hey, surrender is not defeat. Surrender is victory. You're right, exactly what you said. I I knew that if I didn't do something differently, yeah, number one, yeah, I'd have physicals, and my numbers were all screwed up, from liver tests and things like this. And I said, I don't need this, I want to, and I told my wife, I said, I want to be the husband you married, and I want to be the person that I used to be, and I can do that, uh, but not without help. And frankly, you know, getting in Mike's group and was a blessing in so many ways because I was surrounded by so many of the guys that are at Tuesday night meetings. So many of the folks there, not a lot of new people now, but still a lot of the people that were 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 people there all the time, and that was a help. That really was, and of course, Tuesday night meetings, you know, are just a godsend. They really are, because the right people, they have we have things in common. We all have had our problems, still have our problems that we deal with, life on life's terms, etc. And those aren't going away. And so we have to learn how to cope with it and learn how to deal with it.
so speaking of that, like, so what were some of the unexpected challenges maybe early in your sobriety that you faced?
I guess hearing the words, you can never have another drink as long as you live. I listened to that at Cornerstone and also at the other facilities that I went to. And I'd say, you got to be kidding me. But it became clear to me after the first relapse and then after the second relapse, hey, there's no going back. Either you stop or you're gonna end up exactly where you started when you entered the program. It's not gonna get any better. It's gonna get nothing but worse. And so and that was very, very difficult to accept the beginning. But the interesting thing about it was it wasn't that hard from a physical standpoint. It was all mental. And it was a matter of getting your mind straight and realizing that, hey, you got to be serious about this. This is serious business. It's a serious disease, and unless you stop right now, it's not going to get any better. And I remember standing up and talking to the group when I was up in Maryland and saying, "Hey, look, guys, you know, you're youngsters. You know, I'm on the end of my life. I mean, toward the end of my life. So I don't have time to waste. I have to take advantage of this right now, or it's going to be too late for me. And fortunately, that has held so far.
That I was thinking when you were talking about the that mental obsession, and it tells us in the book too that the 12, if you work the 12 steps, you will have that spiritual experience. And I remember the first time it was pointed out to me, and I've carried this with me, is that spiritual experience is not necessarily a aha big light,
Yep.
religious epiphany.
Yep.
All it is like you just said it, Jim. It's a psychic change just enough so you don't have to drink today.
That's
That's it.
exactly correct.
You know.
And the funny thing about it is that um, once once I convinced myself, once I surrendered, if you will, and once I came to, well, I had a hard time initially the spiritualism / religious aspects of the program were really interesting because, you know, I had always gone to church. I was an acolyte at the Episcopal Church for years, and 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 it was not me. It was not God that turned his back on me. It was me that turned my back on God. And I, I kind of lost. I almost became, in the words, agnostic. To the point where now that's not a problem anymore. I learned the difference between religion and spiritualism because I didn't understand that at the beginning at all. It wasn't until I was with the program for a while and worked the steps and understood that there is a distinct difference between your spiritualistic life and your religious life, and you had to keep the two separate. And and yet they could still coalesce, but you had to keep them separate.
And that's beautifully said, Jim. It really is. What so what were some of the lessons you learned? I know you kind of went through some of them, but what other lessons did you learn early in recovery that have helped?
Mm. Well, after relapsing a couple times and one thing or the other, I finally took the advice that somebody said, get a sponsor and, and work the steps. And and before I kind of gave it lip service and realized that this time there's no lip service, and I had two sponsors. The first one, Paul and I got a little bit too close being friends rather than sponsee. And so that's when he recommended, and we both agreed, hey, look for something else. And that's when I approached John and told him that I was very interested. He was very, very skeptical. He didn't think, he says, you have a track record that ain't good. And I says, you're exactly correct. My track record is not very good. And but I intend to change that this time. And unfortunately, thus far I have. And but it would be do what they tell you, you know, listen to what they say because they're right. Get a sponsor, work the steps, and and you'll find out that little by little you'll understand the program better. You'll understand responsibilities that you have, not only to yourself but to others around you. Uh, and you hate to be the person that has to stand up and say, I relapsed. And it's embarrassing. It really is. And particularly when you have a track record of success most of your life, it's very, very difficult to then stand up and admit defeat. It really is.
Well, I was a chronic relapser too, but I always had, Jim, I don't like calling it relapse. I never have. I always call it I call it default mode. We went
Yeah,
into
there you go.
we went into default mode. I couldn't get out of default mode, or as
Yep.
one of our old friends used to say, if you're still doing it, it's not old behavior, that kind of stuff.
That's right. That's a good point.
So what helps you stay committed, on tough days?
Thinking about how hard it was to start it all over again. Uh, when you have to start from day one and go through the pain, if you will, withdrawal to an extent, but mental withdrawal. I don't want to have to go through that again. I've done it once, and I don't want to have to go back and relearn things that I've already learned. And so that's one of the things. Plus, the fact is that from a physical standpoint, I don't miss alcohol. I don't miss it at all. And even now, from an emotional standpoint, I don't miss it. The idea I can be somewhere where people are drinking, it doesn't bother me. It really, truly does not bother me. It's fine with them. I tell people I'm not ashamed of the fact that I'm a recovering alcoholic, and I tell people that. And nobody ever says anything about trying to push you for a drink or anything like that. But I just say, hey, I made a decision that I I got to like uh, Miss Goose way too much. Oh, Great Goose was my friend, and I decided that I needed to divorce her and look at Diet Coke and ginger ale.
Cut the goose loose. That's what.
Cut the goose loose. Yeah, there you go. I like that. I'll
Um,
remember that one.
so, how's did you have to rebuild trust with like your wife or your
So
family? What was that like?
absolutely. In fact, my son and daughter uh, both of them were in Virginia, and my son reached out to my best friend growing up in the Marine Corps, and told him about what I was going through, and I did have to do. I mean, and as you know, it's through actions, it's not words. I'm sorry, it doesn't go very far, and I was sorry, but now I got to prove to you that I'm a better person than I used to be. And so, yeah, I had to, and particularly with my wife. I mean, she was hesitant. She said, "Okay, are you going to rule? Are you serious this time?" And I was, and I proved to her. I said, I said the first time when she brought up the divorce thing, I said, "Let's give this 6 months." I said, and if at the end of 6 months things haven't changed, do what you need to do. And said, but let's not throw away 26 years. Let's give it 6 months. And fortunately, I was able to prove to her that I could do it, and and without too many, I mean, I still have my moments of frustration and probably uh, run my mouth too much, and, uh, but she knows that her welfare, the welfare of our kids, now our grandkids, are very, very important to me. And I'll never abrogate that responsibility again. At least that's what I've told her. And it takes a while, but it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah,
And but I think after almost 5 years, I'm on the right track.
yeah, yeah. That's and you're right, Jim. It's actions.
Yeah,
Our family. If I'm sure your family's similar to mine, where it was the I'm sorries and the I'm
yeah,
gonnas and the I
yeah.
will and all that stuff. It's like Missouri. We're like the show me state. It's like
Show me
show
state.
me.
Yeah, yeah. Prove it to me.
Prove
Yeah.
it. Um,
And
so what are some of the best things that have happened to you since you've been sober?
waking up with a clear head, not worrying about where the next drink is going to be. I remember sitting around and saying, "Oh God, damn, I got to make sure I stock up for the weekend." And like so many people, I hid this around, and my wife knew all the hiding places. I didn't. I thought I was pretty damn smart. I wasn't. She knew exactly where all this stuff was, and so not having to worry about that or worry about telling lies that you had to remember. What did I say? You know, am I gonna contradict myself? You know, because I say something that I have already lied about, and because we're great liars and thieves. You know, I mean, there's no doubt about it. And I was among the best. I thought I was so smart, and I realized how dumb I really was. and, and it didn't work.
Well, I like what you said, that it's because it's just those simple things, Jim. It's like we tell the truth now.
Yeah. Yep.
We don't have to hide from people. We wake up with a clear head. Those are so that's really pretty cool stuff to
It
me.
is great stuff. It really is. I mean, to know that you can go to bed and wake up with a clear head and not have to worry about where that next drink is coming. And good Lord, I did that for too long, and I'm so happy I'm not doing it anymore. It just has made life a whole heck of a lot more enjoyable.
So what role does helping others play in your recovery, Jim?
Not as much as it should. I
Okay.
would love to. I guess for a long time, I thought I really have nothing to offer people, and even though I have all this experience, uh, I don't really have anything to offer. But I think that's untrue now. I think I'm more than willing to try to help another alcoholic if I get a chance, and I'll go out of my way to try to help another alcoholic. But again, I guess maybe because of where we live, away from the group, and I don't go to as many meetings. Uh, I'm with the my home group is uh, at the Park 40 Club with my group there, and I used to religiously go to meetings there, and now I do it pretty much by Zoom. And so as a result, you don't have that personal interaction, and I miss that. And I really need to start. I probably need to start going back to the meetings that we have at Park 40, and noon meetings, easy to do, and uh, rather than doing it on the phone, I volunteer. I'm a member of the intergroup uh, advisory groups, the IEET, yeah, group, and I've been doing that for about 18, yeah, 12, 14 months, I guess, and report back once a month, yeah, once a month to my home group, anything that comes up. Uh, but I don't do as much as I should, Joe. I really don't.
Well, I think you sell yourself short sometimes, Jim. I think you have a lot to offer. I I for one, in the meetings we attend together, I will demand that you share more
Yeah,
because I think you have a lot to offer. You
yeah,
do. You have you have a lot to give, and I think the Zoom. I was fortunate because I never. Um, I connected with a guy right around the time the Zoom meetings kind of took off,
uh-huh.
and he needed meetings in person, and there wasn't a whole lot, and so I drove all around Knoxville for a year with this guy who I adore. Shout out to Joel,
Yeah,
and I think we kept each other kind of connected to people,
yeah,
and you're not the first person I've talked to that has said, kind of the Zoom meetings are amazing. Let me just say this. I'm not knocking
yeah,
online meetings because I think they're amazing and you can connect with people from all over the world.
yeah,
But I think it's also important, like you said, to go maybe once a week or
yeah,
twice a week, go to back to that, in-person meeting, where when you can,
I
to
agree.
physically connect
Well,
with people.
and it was funny. For a long time, I tried to do that when we started these things, and the problem is, I'd get to the meeting and it'd be me and one other person, and for the longest time at the in-person meetings, now it's repopulated, and now there's more people going to them, and so now it makes a lot more sense to do in-person meetings than it did before.
So, what's a typical day like from your sobriety, Jim? Like from when time you wake up to, you know, what's it like?
Yeah. Uh, I get up, I try to get up about 7:30, something like that, and have my coffee and one thing and the other, and then talk to my wife a little bit. We kind of, okay, what do we got planned for the day? What are we gonna do? Uh, and hopefully we can agree on what that is. And but I've been doing a lot of uh, audio books, and so I listened to a number of audio books that I've enjoyed, uh, and that takes a little bit of time. And then sometimes at noontime I'll stop, and that's when I'll jump up online and do a Zoom meeting with my group online. And usually there's about 8 to 10 people that are religiously on there as a result. And then in the afternoon, may even snooze a bit, you know, take take a little bit of a nap. But it's really, you know, it's really unfortunate because this damn back thing is killing me, and so I don't get the chance to get out and play golf. I used to play golf 2 or 3 times a week, and then I would, and then when I had the surgeries and one thing and the other, I've had to back that off, and I really missed that a lot. And I realized how much I missed it after sitting and watching the Masters for a few days, Saturday and Sunday, saying, "Damn, I miss playing golf." And so I'm going to start physical therapy again at the beginning of the week, and uh, and that's primarily for balance and strength. Uh, I'm I've lost so damn much weight that I weigh less now than I weighed when I was a senior in high school. For God's sakes, and when I got on a scale, my wife says, "What the hell? 148? Are you shitting me?" And so I've been pumping you know, energy drinks and one thing or the other. But I just need to get back into a good workout routine because I was going to the gym 2 or 3 times a week, and and that has all fallen by the wayside. Simply pain management. That's what it is, and trying to do something about that. And now we're getting ready to kick off RV season, and so we have the new RV, and we're intended to take several long trips, uh, and get in. I want to get to Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, the Badlands, and a number of other things like that. And Josie's into uh, genealogy big time, and so we want to go down to Utah and visit the archives down in Salt Lake City. And so there's a number of things we have planned. In fact, we're sitting down. We sat down today and just kind of mapped out where do we want to go the first time. Now that the weather is warmed up, we can dewinterize our vehicle and get on the road. And we enjoyed the hell out of that. I really do.
That's awesome, Jim.
Yeah.
You know, and it's in sobriety we get to do these things. It's hard to drive a motorhome
Yeah.
if you're not
Yes, it is.
sober. For the
Safely.
listening audience, that is not recommended.
No, it isn't.
So, what would you say to somebody who might be listening, Jim, who's kind of just decide whether they need help or maybe
Hmm.
struggling with alcoholism or another
Yeah.
addiction?
If you think that, whatever you're doing, drugs or alcohol, is it affecting your daily performance of routine things? Does it, if it is, then you probably have a problem. You know, you can go down that checklist and say, "Am I an alcoholic?" Well, you can go down the list, and I can answer yes to a lot of those. You know, not so much I'm drinking anymore, but these are the things that led me to it. But again, if you go to a program, and I'm a big believer of Cornerstone. I think it's a great program, and at least when I went through it, it was uh, listen to what they say. And again, the things that I didn't do, you do. Yeah, you get out there and you get a sponsor, sit down with them, have a real discussion with them, learn what his experiences were, and then work the steps with them, because it's so daggone important that you understand that it's not a okay. I checked this one off. I did that. No, it don't work that way. This is a constant 7 day, 24-hour a day thing that you have to accept, and acceptance is a big thing. You have to accept the problem, and admit to the fact. You know, the first step. You know, my life had become unmanageable. Yeah, it did, and you'll know that because when your life changes and you start doing things that you never had done before, you know that your life is changing, and you have to take some steps, action steps, to make sure that that you get a grip. You're not going to solve your problem. You're not going to be cured. There's no cure for it at this point, and so be willing to be accepting of your situation, and take the action necessary to get you back on track.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you for messages. Is there anything else we didn't cover that you'd like to share?
No, I think that, again, a lot of people grew up like I did with broken families and broken homes and one thing and the other. I was fortunate that I had a good, strong mother that kept that from getting out of hand and influencing me negatively. And so, yeah, I think about how lucky I was, in a time when some of my friends were doing the wrong stuff, even when you're 10 and 11 years old. And fortunately, uh, I knew where my boundaries were set, and I knew where my limitations were, and I attribute that all to my mom, and frankly, later on, my stepfather. He was more of a father to me than my real father was. So, all things considered, I've been blessed in so many different ways. Now I got to make sure that I don't wreck my legacy because of alcohol. And I made I did some great things, and now let's make sure we focus on the positive things in life and not the negative things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Finish on a good note. You've had
absolutely.
such an amazing life, Jim. Such an amazing career, and I really appreciate you sharing your story and your experience and your your hope with people.
Yeah.
But before we go, Jim, we got to
Yep.
do our rapid fire questions.
Absolutely. I got it. I'll see if I can do it.
You can do it. You can do it, Jim. So what is your favorite recovery slogan?
Keep coming back.
What is your least favorite recovery slogan?
You know, let me think. Okay. Least favorite recovery slogan. I don't know. I'll be honest with you.
Okay,
I haven't thought about it.
that's okay. What do you think is your sobriety superpower?
My higher power and my family.
Nice. If you could say one thing to your former self, what would it be?
Listen to what they taught you in school. Do what they tell you. And not in school, but in rehab.
Well, that's kind of school for us.
Yeah,
We kind of
it is.
it's somewhat of a private school, I guess. What song do you play to lift your spirits when you need a boost?
Oh, let's see. I got friends in low places.
Nice. Little Garth Brooks.
Little Garth Brooks.
If you could grant yourself one wish to help with your recovery, what would it be?
Please make sure the cravings and the obsession never returns.
Nice. What step do you love the most?
I think number 3.
Okay. What step do you love the least?
Probably number 10.
What is one of your favorite movies?
Shawshank Redemption.
Good movie. And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
Thank you for staying with the program. Welcome aboard.
Nice, Jim. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Jim, and telling your story. You're a good man, sir.
Thank you, Joe. I appreciate it. I'm really happy I had the opportunity. Really, I really enjoyed it. Now I need to stay on here.
All right, everybody. A new episode is released every Thursday at noon. You can listen to the show on your favorite podcast apps, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, YouTube, and others. Just search for The Cup of Joe Show. Don't forget the "the." Please follow, like, subscribe, and share because someone out there needs to hear this today. Have a good day, everybody.
It's just a laid-back vibe, baby.
We hope you enjoyed today's Experience, Strength, and Hope. We are so grateful you decided to join us. Please share this episode with someone who might need it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. Remember, no matter where you are in your recovery journey, you are not alone. Reach up and reach out to someone. Please do not suffer in silence. Until next time, let's take it 1 minute, 1 hour, and 1 day at a time. Thanks for listening to The Cup of Joe Show.